Welcome back. Friday, May 24th was a day Britain's at least MPs had been waiting for when Mrs. May, the Prime Minister, Theresa May, announced a definitive date for her exit as Prime Minister, June 7th.
So I am today announcing that I will resign as leader of the Conservative and Unionist Party on Friday the 7th of June, so that a successor can be chosen. I do so with no ill will, but with enormous and enduring gratitude to have had the opportunity to serve the country I love.
The reason she is resigning is because she has not been able to deliver on Brexit, despite a promise at the beginning of her career as Prime Minister that Brexit means Brexit. And so far, 5 candidates have confirmed their intention to stand for the contest of the party leader and Prime Minister. We see in no particular order former Foreign Secretary Boris Johnson, Foreign Secretary Jeremy Hunt, Health Secretary Matt Hancock, International Development Secretary Rory Stewart, and former Work and Pension Secretary Esther McAvey, and newly joined Environment Minister Michael Gove. So what happens now that Mrs. May has announced her resignation, and what happens to the Brexit negotiations and to Britain's allies? I pose those questions to immigration lawyer Fadina, who's in London. Mr. Fadina, thank you for joining us on Diplomatic Channel. Mrs. May's announcement was no shock, it appears. It was just a matter of when. And now we have a date, June 7th. Would you describe her effort to help bring Britain out of the European Union as a failure, or does she deserve some commendation for having brought the country this far, where what is left is deciding a deal that appeals to all parties?
The issue as to why she had to resign and the problems still remain. Brexit has now become a very poisoned chalice for any Tory leader who ventures into the issue of Brexit. And since I've known and followed, British politics for so many years, the Tory party has always had this penchant for obsessive, destructive habits of, shooting itself in the foot on the issue of Europe and now Brexit. Now, first of all, we should also take on board the fact that in the last 3 years, 2 Tory prime ministers have had to go just because of the Brexit situation. And we should also take on board the fact that the whole nightmarish British situation to do with Brexit is now causing so much trouble for people concerned. Now, if we look at if we are to at least look into into what she's done so far the last 2 years, I would say it's mixed, but majorly a failure on the part of Theresa May. What Theresa May did when she took office in 2016, or roughly about 2 years ago, 2017, was she failed to reach out initially, to all the parties concerned, all the parties in Parliament, and the stakeholders who are very, very much into what Brexit should look like, the economic situation, the economic power brokers. She refused. She refused to reach out to all these, interested parties. And for all these reasons, I think she failed woefully. The only commendation I would give her would be this: that because 52% of the people of the UK voted to remain, voted to leave, and 48% voted to remain. She did all she could, her best, to try to calibrate and broker a solution that would satisfy all parties concerned. But unfortunately, she failed in doing this.
So in her last, in the 1 or 2 weeks before, she resigns, she comes up with a new deal, which she was going to present to Parliament. One of the issues in the deal was that the opportunity to also have a second referendum. But did she really have the liberty to change the Brexit deal, the original one that is with the European Union officials at the moment, away from the one presented to them which they have said is the only one that they recognize at this time. Did she have a liberty to have it changed, even having discussed with MPs in the British Parliament?
Yes, we should remember that it took roughly about 2.5 years for the UK and the EU to broker a deal, which was studiously and meticulously, looked into before they came to that very particular deal. And we should also remember that the 27 EU countries had to agree unanimously before that deal was signed, and then she took it back to Parliament. Unfortunately, the Parliament decided that they had a series of votes as to whether they should allow this very particular deal to go through Parliament, but it did not go through Parliament, and she continued to do her best. But right from the beginning, I believe the whole situation was not going to succeed in any way or in any form, because I think the Parliament, particularly members of our own party, the Tory party, were hell-bent, particularly the hard Brexiteers, were hell-bent on not agreeing to any deal. They were not particularly interested in what Theresa May had to offer. And we also had a situation where, because she never truly reached out to members of the opposition, the opposition parties, right from the beginning. What she then did was she tried towards the end to reach out, but at the same time she opened the door for other parties to come in to see what they could do in terms of salvaging the deal. But she opened the door, but her ears were closed. I mean, she wasn't particularly listening to what could have made a difference.
Yeah, and one of the things that the opposition, especially Jeremy Corbyn, kept talking about, and the other naysayers to Mrs. May's deal, former Foreign Secretary Boris Johnson, kept talking about, was another referendum for the British people to decide for themselves. You would think that the first referendum was enough. Would you support a second one?
Well, I think it's fundamentally necessary right now. The Brexit we know today, what the people voted for in 2016, compared to this toxic Brexit situation we have today, I think the people have that inalienable right to now vote on what they now know of Brexit. The people should now be given that choice to conclude on whether, based on what they know about Brexit today and what we have on the table today, whether they would still want to leave the EU or, in the alternative, remain within the EU.
So Mrs. May's resignation, pulling her out of the equation, how does it affect the whole Brexit process, and especially Britain's relations with her allies, Nigeria, for example?
Oh, well, the fact that she's resigned, I'm not too sure whether Nigeria and other Commonwealth countries would miss her at all. And I'm saying this for one or two particular reasons. We should remember that Theresa May was the lady who, under which the Windrush situation occurred, where so many Commonwealth countries were very upset about what was going on. We should also remember that it was this same Theresa May who, some years ago, I think some 4 or 5 years ago, pronounced very clearly to the British public and the whole world that she would be creating an hostile environment for immigrants. And many of these immigrants come from the Commonwealth countries, particularly Nigeria. So I'm not too sure. I don't think that the Commonwealth countries would be missing out at all. But one worrying thing about the whole situation, though, is as bad as Theresa May is, I am a little bit worried that there's a very high probability that Boris Johnson, the front runner right now in the Tory party, would now become the leader of the Tory party. I'm not really sure whether he would be protecting the interests and the rights of the ethnic minority in this country.
Well, we have at least a week or so, to find out how things turn out. Mr. Fadina, thank you again for speaking with us on Diplomatic Channel.
Oh, it's a pleasure.
And that's the program this week. Don't forget, previous editions of the program can be viewed on channelstv.com or youtube.com/channelsweb. You can reach me on @Amarachi_Ubani on Twitter for your comments. Thanks again and goodbye.